The child's lips had turned blue. That was the first thing Marcus Vale noticed when the royal chamber doors burst open and 3 Vahari guards carried the princess inside. He had been standing post for 6 hours without moving, standard for a human diplomatic attaché assigned to the Vahari Imperial Palace, and, in all that time, he had seen nothing more dramatic than a servant drop a ceremonial bowl. Now the room was chaos. Princess Cirith, 7th heir to the Vahari throne and only daughter of Queen Ivalith, was limp in the arms of her guard. Her silver skin, normally luminous with the faint bioluminescence all Vahari carried, had gone dull and gray. Her 4-fingered hands hung loose. Her secondary eyelids, the thin protective membranes that Vahari closed in distress, were sealed shut. She was 8 years old. She was dying. "Move," said the head physician, Turath, sweeping in behind the guards with his long coat snapping at his heels. The chamber cleared in seconds. Marcus stayed. His post was the east wall. Until someone with authority told him to leave, he did not move. That was the protocol. That was his value here. Turath did not waste time on him. He crouched over the princess, pressed his 6-fingered hands to her neck, her chest, the hollow beneath her jaw where Vahari stored a secondary pulse. His face gave nothing away. That was how Marcus knew it was serious. Vahari physicians performed calm like armor. They only let it slip when the situation was already lost. "How long?" Turath said to the guards. "She refused meals for 9 days, said the senior guard, a tall female named Orith whose posture had not changed despite the tremor in her voice. "We believed it was grief. The Queen's campaign has kept Her Majesty away for 3 months. The princess has been withdrawn. 9 days. Taratha's hands moved faster. "You waited 9 days. She ordered us not to report it. She is of the 2nd rank. Protocol, protocol." The word came out flat and final. "Get me the nutrient serums. The blue vials, not the standard. And someone contact the Queen's ship." The guards scattered. Marcus remained on the east wall. Turath looked up at him then, as if noticing him for the first time. His expression was not hostile. It was merely calculating. "You? Human. Can you be useful, or are you furniture?" "Whatever you need," Marcus said. "Hold this." Turath pressed a thin metal instrument into his hand, a pressure calibrator used to regulate the flow of intravenous lines in Vahari physiology. "Do not let the needle move more than 2 millimeters in either direction. If it drifts, tell me immediately. Do not adjust it yourself." "Understood." For the next 40 minutes, Marcus held that instrument completely still while Turath worked. He had steady hands. People always underestimated that about him. He was not large by human standards, not particularly fast, and his combat scores had placed him solidly in the middle of his class at the diplomatic corps. But no one in his cohort had steadier hands. He had once held a split artery closed for 22 minutes on a rescue op in the Dravith asteroid belt while waiting for a med team. He had not moved a centimeter. He did not move now. Ciritha's bioluminescence returned slowly, the way dawn comes. First a pale line, then a soft glow, then something that looked almost like life. Her secondary eyelids opened. She looked at the ceiling. Then she looked at him. Vahari children had large eyes, copper-colored, with horizontal pupils. Hers were half-focused and heavy with whatever sedative Turath had administered. But she was looking at him specifically, not at the physician, not at the familiar walls of her chamber, at the human holding the metal instrument at her side. She said something in Old Vahari. Marcus did not speak Old Vahari. He spoke conversational modern Vahari, enough to navigate the palace without offending anyone, and he recognized the word she used. It meant strange. He kept his hand perfectly still and said, in his best modern Bahari, "You should rest, princess." She blinked at him. Then, impossibly, the corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something smaller. Something exhausted and curious at the same time. Turath finished his work and straightened up. He looked at Marcus with something that was not quite gratitude, but lived in the same neighborhood. "You may release the instrument now." Marcus released it. His hand had a faint tremor now that it was over, but he kept it below the level of notice. "The Queen has been contacted," Aura said from the doorway. "She is 3 hours out." "She is displeased with the delay in reporting. She will be more displeased when she arrives," Turath said quietly. No one disagreed. Marcus returned to his post on the east wall. The princess had closed her eyes. She was breathing. That was what mattered. Outside the tall windows of the Imperial Palace, the twin moons of Varro were rising over a violet sea, and the night was just beginning. Queen Ivolith arrived in 2 hours and 40 minutes, which meant she had pushed the ship past its rated speed. Marcus was still on the east wall when she walked in. He had not been relieved, had not asked to be relieved, and had eaten nothing since morning. He noticed the hunger abstractly, the way he noticed most physical discomfort, as information, not emergency. The Queen was taller than he expected. He had seen her in official holos, of course. Every diplomatic attaché studied the full Bahari imperial family before posting, but holos compressed something essential. In person, she was nearly 8 feet tall, and the bioluminescence that ran along her jaw and collarbone was a deep, pulsing gold, the mark of royal blood he knew, but also something that looked like barely contained fury. She went to her daughter first. She did not run. Bahari royalty did not run. But her stride ate the distance in a way that was harder to watch than running would have been. She crouched beside Sirith the way Turath had, but her hands moved differently, not clinical, not measuring. She simply touched her daughter's face with both palms, held them there, and was still for a long moment. The gold light pulsed once, very bright, and then steadied. Sirith woke. She looked at her mother. Something passed between them that had no language. Then the Queen stood and turned to face the room. Orith and the other guards had dropped to the formal submission posture, one knee, head down, both hands visible. Turath stood straight, because physicians had different protocols, but his expression was carefully neutral. 3 palace functionaries near the far wall were frozen in place. The Queen's copper eyes moved across all of them. They stopped on Marcus. He held her gaze. He was not being defiant. He simply did not know the correct submission posture for his rank during an unscheduled royal arrival, and defaulting to the wrong gesture could cause more diplomatic damage than standing still. He had learned that in his first week at the palace. "You are the human attaché," she said. Her modern Bahari was precise and cold. "Yes, your majesty. Marcus Vale. Diplomatic Corps, 3rd posting. You were present when my daughter was brought in." "Yes." "You stayed." "My post is the east wall, your majesty. I was not ordered to leave." A pause. The gold light along her jaw pulsed slowly. "Turath." The physician stepped forward. "Your majesty. His role in my daughter's stabilization." Turath did not hesitate. He held the pressure calibrator for 40 minutes without deviation. His stillness was significant. I could not have managed both the serum line and the calibrator simultaneously. I did not ask for his help. He simply provided it when I requested. Another pause. Longer this time. 40 minutes, the Queen repeated. She was not asking for confirmation. She was filing it somewhere. His hands did not move, Turath said. And then, as if the precision mattered. Not once. The Queen looked back at Marcus. He felt the weight of that look the way you feel a change in atmospheric pressure, not painful, but impossible to ignore. "Why did you stay on your post?" she asked. "Protocol, Your Majesty." Protocol. The word had a different quality in her voice than it had in Taratha's. Not contempt. Something more like recognition. "And when Tarath asked for your assistance?" "He needed it." "That is not protocol." "No, Your Majesty." "Then why?" He considered the question with the same stillness he had given the calibrator. "Because the princess needed to live more than I needed to follow the exact boundary of my assignment." The room was very quiet. Ortha's knee had not moved from the floor. The functionaries had stopped breathing. The Queen held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then she turned away. "Tarath, full report on my daughter's condition and the 9-day failure of reporting. Orth, you will explain yourself in detail at the 3rd bell." She moved toward Siratha's bedside. "Everyone else, out." They filed out. Marcus moved toward the door with them. "Not you," said the Queen. He stopped. She was sitting beside Sirath now, her large hand resting on the girl's head. She did not look at him. "You will remain on post until you are formally relieved." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And Vale." "Your Majesty. Sirath spoke of you when I arrived, before she was fully awake." Still she did not look at him. "She said you told her to rest, that you said it in proper Mahari." "I did." "She said you held still the entire time, that she could see it even through the sedative." A pause. "She said it made her feel that things were not completely lost." He had no response for that. He did not try to manufacture one. The Queen's gold light pulsed once. "Children notice what adults perform past," she said quietly. "My daughter has not felt safe in 3 months. Whatever you did with your stillness, your voice, your hands, it reached her." She paused. "I wanted you to know that." Marcus stood on the east wall. The twin moons were fully risen now. The princess was breathing evenly, her silver skin luminous again in the dark. He said nothing, because nothing was required. He simply held his post. By morning the palace had restructured around the event the way a body restructures around a wound, carefully, with intent, and with an awareness that something had changed permanently. Orth was reassigned. Not punished in the way Marcus might have expected, no demotion, no public censure. She was moved to a post that carried less direct responsibility for the princess. In Mahari culture, he understood, that was its own kind of consequence. The removal of trust was not delivered with noise. It arrived in silence, and it lasted. Taras submitted his formal report before the 3rd bell. Marcus saw him in the corridor afterward, and the physician gave him a single nod, the Vihari gesture for acknowledgement between equals, not between superior and subordinate. Marcus returned it. Sirath was awake and sitting up by mid-morning. He could see her from the east wall through the open inner archway, propped against her sleeping cushions, and talking to her mother in the low, continuous murmur that seemed to be how they communicated when no one else was meant to hear. The Queen had not left. She had rescheduled whatever obligations had kept her on campaign. She had not announced this, had not made a display of it. She had simply stayed. At the 11th hour, a palace functionary approached Marcus with a sealed document. He opened it. It was a formal reassignment. His posting was being changed from East Wall attaché to something with a longer title that he had to read 3 times to parse. The translation came out roughly as dignitary of standing presence in the inner chambers. It was not a title he had ever heard before. He looked up. The functionary was already gone. He folded the document precisely and slipped it into his coat. He did not smile. He was still on post, and the post still required stillness. But something in his chest adjusted, not pride exactly, something quieter than pride. The sense of having done the right thing at the right moment, and having been seen doing it by someone who understood what it cost. At midday, Sirith appeared in the archway. She was steadier on her feet than he expected. She walked to the edge of the arch and stopped, looking at him across the chamber. She was wearing a light recovery garment, silver gray, and the bioluminescence along her temples was soft and steady. She studied him for a long moment with those copper eyes. Then, she said, in careful modern Bahari, the pronunciation deliberate, a child who had practiced the phrase, "Thank you for staying still." He met her eyes. "You're welcome, princess." She nodded once, very seriously, and went back to her mother. He returned to his post. The afternoon light was coming through the tall windows now, pale gold across the stone floor, and the palace around him was quiet with the particular quiet of a crisis that had passed through and left everyone changed. He stood in it without filling it with movement or words, because some moments required presence more than action, and he had learned, by instinct, by training, by something that went deeper than either, how to be present completely. 3 days later, Queen Ivolith summoned him to an audience without advance notice, which was itself unusual. Formal audiences had protocols, preparatory meetings, scripted frameworks. This was simply, "Come now." He came. The audience chamber was smaller than he expected for a queen, furnished with deliberate minimalism. She was standing when he entered, not seated at the throne dais, which meant this was not official. She was facing the window, hands clasped behind her back. He stopped at the correct distance and waited. She said, without turning, "My daughter has not eaten willingly in 3 months. Not since I left for the campaign. She ate this morning. Full portion. Without being asked." He waited. "She asked that you be present in the inner chambers during her meals. Not interacting. Not serving. Simply present." She turned then, and her expression was not warm exactly. Warmth was not what the queen led with, but it was open in a way that royal composure rarely allowed. "She says the stillness helps her." He considered his response with care. "I'm honored by her trust, your majesty. You should be. She does not extend it readily." A pause. "I want to understand something. How did you learn to hold still that way?" The physician said it was unusual even by human standards. He thought about how to answer that honestly. "When I was a child, my sister was ill for a long time. Serious illness, the kind that required a lot of medical intervention. I used to sit with her during the hard parts because I found early that I could do it without flinching, and she found that steadying." He paused. "I learned that some people need to see something that isn't afraid before they can stop being afraid themselves." The queen was quiet for a moment. Her gold light pulsed slowly. "Yes," she said. "That is exactly it." She turned back to the window. "My daughter lost her anchor when I left. She would not show fear to the guards, would not accept comfort from the functionaries. She was holding herself together by refusing everything, and the refusal became its own wall." She paused. "You did not try to breach the wall. You simply stood outside it and were not afraid, and eventually she opened a door herself." He said nothing. It felt like she had already said everything that needed saying. "The posting I gave you," she continued, "it is a new role. There is no established protocol for it. I want you to understand that I am creating it specifically because of what I observed." She paused. "You will be near my daughter. You will not manage her, instruct her, or perform care. You will simply be present, available, steady, real. When she is ready to engage, you engage. When she is not, you hold still." She turned to look at him again. "Can you do that?" "Yes, your majesty." It will not be exciting work. I don't do this work because it's exciting. Something crossed her face, fleeting, controlled, but unmistakably there. Respect. Not the official kind, not the kind distributed by rank or ceremony. The kind that comes from recognition. No, she said. I don't think you do. She dismissed him with a gesture that meant you may go, and I am not diminished by your leaving, which was the highest form of the dismissal in the Vahari court. He had read about it. He had never received it. He walked back through the palace corridors alone, past the tall windows and the bioluminescent wall carvings and the guards at their posts who watched him with the careful attention of people recalibrating an assessment. He was the human who had been in the room. He was the human the princess had asked for. He was the human the queen had received in private audience and dismissed with a gesture reserved for peers. He did not hurry. He did not perform the moment. He walked at his usual pace, and inside him something had quietly, permanently shifted, and he carried it the same way he had carried everything else in his life that mattered, with both hands, completely still, not letting it move a single millimeter in either direction until he was certain he understood its full weight. 6 weeks later, Sirith was running in the outer gardens, actually running, with that reckless speed children reach when they have remembered how to be careless again, while Marcus stood at the perimeter edge with the stillness that had become, in the palace's understanding, simply part of how he occupied space. The queen appeared beside him without ceremony. She did so sometimes now. She would stand at his shoulder and watch her daughter and say nothing, and he would say nothing, and the silence between them was not empty. She has started eating everything, Ivla said. I noticed. She asked me last night why humans hold still when they're scared instead of moving. A pause. I told her I didn't know. She said she would ask you. What did you tell her to do? I told her to ask you herself. He watched Sarah spin through a patch of tall blue grass, arms wide. What do you think I'll tell her? The queen was quiet for a moment. Her gold light pulsed once in the afternoon sun, deep and steady. I think, she said slowly, you'll tell her the truth. That it isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and deciding the thing in front of you matters more than the fear. He glanced at her. She was watching her daughter. I think, she continued quieter now, that you will tell her that everyone has something worth holding still for. And that knowing what yours is, that is the whole of it. She paused. I think that is what you have been showing her for 6 weeks without saying a single word. Sirith came tearing back toward them, breathless and bright, the bioluminescence along her temples blazing with exertion and joy. She skidded to a stop in front of Marcus and looked up at him with those copper eyes full of questions she hadn't figured out how to word yet. He met her gaze. He held completely still. She took a breath, steadied herself, unconsciously mirroring him, he noticed, the way children mirror the things that have steadied them. And then she asked, in her careful, practiced Vahari, Marcus, why do you never move when things are frightening? He looked down at her for one long moment, aware of the queen at his shoulder, aware of the garden and the twin suns low on the horizon and the weight of 6 weeks of trust accumulated in small, still moments. He said, because you needed something that wasn't moving. And you mattered more than my fear. Sirith stared at him. Then she turned and bolted back into the garden at full speed, and he heard her laughing, bright and sharp and completely unguarded, and the sound of it moved through the afternoon air and hit him somewhere behind the sternum where he kept the things that mattered, and he stood on the edge of that garden in the golden alien light, completely still, and let it land. The queen said nothing. The twin suns dipped below the horizon. He held his post .2/2.